Hello again. I want to talk a little bit about death cafes and the idea around them and why I think they're important. What is a death cafe? Has anyone heard of this before? In the simplest of explanations, a death cafe is just a space, whether it's physical or virtual, where people gather to talk about anything that pertains to death and dying. It's usually facilitated or led by a host that maintains an agenda-free discussion that is group-led and that has basically you're not there to impose a specific view or try to sell your point. It is rather a space where you are holding space for other people, and others are doing the same for you to share what is on your mind and heart, your fears, your concerns, and anything that pertains to death and dying and why you showed up today. I think there is such a huge discrepancy between the level of death phobia and the hesitancy to talk about death and dying in our culture, but also the extreme desire for most people to do so. What I find is lacking is our spaces where these conversations can be had. I heard about death cafes, I think in 2019, and when the pandemic came, I started facilitating them online because I was sitting at home, having a break from work, and I saw how much my medical colleagues were suffering at the time and how much trauma there was, even on a larger scale across the board for everyone involved, everyone in society, not just the medical staff, but people in general. So I started holding bi-monthly spaces on Zoom where anyone could come and just be present and share and listen to others, or sit quietly and just observe, and that was equally impactful for them. What I also did for the first time is I myself would go to other people's death cafes, and I would go probably 5 times a week. It was really intense time. It was a time of extreme stress and trauma on an individual and collective scale, and I found that it really served as a lifeline for many people, myself included at that time. We finally had a safe space to talk about our fears, our general fears of being a finite, immortal human being, but also share and offload some of the trauma that we were all experiencing because of the COVID pandemic. Honestly, looking back, I think the pandemic itself served as a catalyst for, it was almost like an awakening that people were finally given permission. And yeah, it was a catalyst for people to open up about it and start talking about the inevitable death and dying. Long story short, I have also presented death cafes to the hospitals I have trained in since that time. And I have held in-person death cafes here in my hometown of Troy, New York. And they are really life-changing. When I attended the virtual death cafes in 2020, it literally changed my life. It had a tremendous impact on my psyche. I was able to grow from things and hearing things and even things I didn't hear, things that I observed and felt from being in such spaces transformed me. And even if I'm not running an official death cafe, whether it's virtual or in person, I am participating on various online platforms such as this, because I think my passion is to raise awareness and acceptance of death and dying, and to normalize the talk around the word death and to make it normal again. I do want to make the distinction that there's never any judgment, there's never any preaching. Everybody's here to walk their own path in life, and everyone is entitled to their beliefs, and we are holding each person that comes to a death cafe with the utmost respect for them as an individual and their beliefs around what it means for them. So death cafes are safe in the sense that we do not, like I said, pass judgment on anyone's beliefs. We are not there to correct anyone. We are there to simply hold space and listen to the person and have them do the same for us when it's our turn to speak. I think for me and for a lot of people, a big reason why death cafes are transformative is because sometimes there are times of silence, and that could be really organic, not intentional meaning. And during that silence, you get to look at your own self and listen to your inner monologue and get to decide how aware you are of that and what you choose to do with that. So sometimes it's not that it was the silence that bothered people, but the actual fear of what came up for them in their head as they were sitting in silence. And silence can teach us a lot about ourselves, essentially, because we get to look at our own thoughts as they arise because nobody else is speaking, and all of a sudden we are very uncomfortable. It's really a beautiful practice to see what comes up for you and to sit with that, even if you are uncomfortable. Of course, I recognize that not everyone is as comfortable with silence as I am, so I did not impose it on people, or I did not prolong the silence when it did happen. But I did allow it some time to stimulate something in people, myself included. It's an ongoing practice. I'm not a yogi, I'm not an ascended master, for example, because if I was, I wouldn't be back here teaching this. But yeah, from time to time, I may jump on here and do a live Death Cafe. I think it's a beautiful practice for anyone, and I certainly enjoy facilitating those spaces. Let me know what your thoughts are, whether you have heard of a Death Cafe, whether you have been to a Death Cafe before, or whether you would be interested in having something like this live on TikTok. For those of you that may be interested in checking it out, you can also go to deathcafe.com. And they have virtual and in-person death cafes every day of the week around the globe, not just the country. It's worldwide. Let me know your thoughts, or if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share that in my comment section. Thank you.